first of all, thank you for showing the film, and thank you for persevering during this difficult time. The situation hasn't changed much for people like Ximei who live in peasant villages, although for people who live in major cities like Beijing or Shanghai, people can pretty much live a normal life because they have access to imported medicines. But in Ximei's case, they only give her domestic medicines because they're cheaper, and she has to fight, as you can see in the film, to try and get these medicines. So her situation and those of the people who were inflicted with AIDS by the government during their blood drive campaign, their situation has not improved at all. Ximei is like a natural born helper, caregiver, therapist. So no matter what comes her way, whether it's HIV or Corona, she's always going to be helping people get better and deal with the situation therapeutically and physically with medicine. Well, she was under lockdown. She went to visit her uncle and she got caught in the middle of a lockdown, so she couldn't get into her home village to get her medicine. So she had to circumvent that situation. And then she was ready to come to Movies That Matter. And then they passed a new law in China that you had to self-quarantine for 14 days before you can leave. So she took a private car to Zumadian train station. And at the train station, the police were waiting for her. They knew her whereabouts, and they knew that she was headed towards the Netherlands, and they knew the date that she was going because they put surveillance on her mobile phone. And perhaps she was a bit too lax, and she was sending me back and forth dates. So on her way to Movies That Matter, at the train station, the police told her, get out of the car. She refused to get out of the car. So they telephoned it in, and 7 other police officers came and forced her out of the car. And then they took her down to the police station. And they said, you can't go to The Hague because we know you're going to tarnish China's reputation. You know, you're going to say bad things, and then you're going to influence others in your village to also say bad things. So at the police station, they said, sorry about this. There's also the coronavirus. You shouldn't be going anywhere. And then they offered her noodles, instant noodles. She says, basically, you can stick the noodles where the sun doesn't shine. And then she went back home and she's under house arrest again. No, the situation is not new to her at all. She's like one of the angels on the planet. And she has a fighting spirit that neither the viruses, nor the police, nor the government will get her down. So, from wherever she can, she's going to fight. She's got such bravery. I felt so guilty because I was like, oh, come to The Hague. There's so many people. The BBC want to do an interview, and Julie's got all these great organizations set up to try and help you. And we thought it was a good idea. And now she's back under house arrest, just so frustrating. But she's such a trooper and such a warrior that she's got what it takes to fight. It took 7 years because every time we went down there, finally they caught up with me and they said, you got to leave. You can't interview AIDS patients. That happened time and time again. So we went back again a year later, we filmed. And so this continued for 7 years. And as you can see in the film, I put at the end of the film, I wasn't sure if I wanted to put all that in, but I put one instance at the end where the authorities came and said, you have to leave. So just to give the viewer a feel of what it's like. It's a cat and mouse game. But for foreigners like myself, there's not much risk other than getting kicked out of the country or kicked out of the county. But for my cameraman, Huang Huang, who you can see in the film, it's a huge risk. And in fact, he's in jail for all this activism. So we have the driver was harassed. We have our cameraman in jail, not specifically because of our film. He sent a meme referencing the Tiananmen massacre, and that's the reason that they gave for him to be in jail. Ximei's under house arrest, and a lot of our subjects were questioned and taken down to the police station and made to sign statements. So it's complete harassment. It's a blockout. Press are not allowed in there. So I can't ask for a permit to film because they'll say no. But if you do it, surreptitiously, you risk not only yourself, but primarily you risk your subjects. And that's the hardest thing to do when you film compromised people. But they really want to get their message out there, so they know the risk and they take it. So Huang Huang is just an amazing guy who used to work in an office and then gave up everything after the Sichuan earthquake in 2008. And then he was really interested in filmmaking, camera work. So I encouraged his camera work, and my cameraman taught him a lot. And he was working on a film with Namfu Wang and myself called Hooligan Sparrow. And then we used it for Ximei. And then he puts this meme. Also, it was like a joke. He put a meme of a bottle of Baiju, which is this local drink, and on the label, he referenced Tiananmen Square. And just for that meme, he's in jail now since May. It's almost a year. He hasn't been charged. His lawyers aren't allowed to see him. And his family saw him, I think, once or twice. So it's a very, very difficult situation. So what can the audience do? I mean, Movies That Matter, what I love about your festival is that you not only talk the talk, but you walk the walk. So right away, you connected us with Mike Downey from the European Film Academy. So Mike Downey sent a statement to all the trade papers and various other organizations, and that really helped give visibility. What we've learned from shooting in China is that if you give people who are arrested, prisoners of consciousness, attention and shine the light on them, it really helps, because then the authorities realize they're not an orphan. And we can see this happen with Ye Haiyan, obviously Ai Weiwei, the whole world was fighting to get him out. Ximei, the United Nations gave a lot of attention after she came. In the film, you'll see she came to Geneva, and then after she left Geneva, she suffered reprisals and was put under house arrest again. The UN jumped into action because she gave a press conference at the UN, and the UN takes it very seriously when people go and state their case and then go home and suffer reprisals. So by shining a light, what Movies That Matter is doing by introducing us to Mike Downey is helping Huang Huang's cause. Movies That Matter can post something, or if anybody else in the audience has any idea how to shine a light on this very sad case, because this man has only helped everybody and is suffering a very bad fate in a Sichuan jail since May. No trial, no official charges. They even put him in a psychiatric hospital because that way they don't have to bring charges against him. So it's a very desperate situation for him. Well, I gotta say, even though China skewed the facts and centered information, what they did do right is the way that they handled it aggressively. They shut down, they had the totalitarian infrastructure to do so, so they shut down the area, in Wuhan, where it was the epicenter, and they stopped people, they were contained. They stopped people from traveling, they tested, they were able to bring the curve down, as we see, because of their draconian measures. When Italy was going under its catastrophe, here in Switzerland, we had, because we share a border with Italy and France. So every day, 70,000 workers from Italy cross the border to come to Switzerland, particularly to Ticino, to do the work that Swiss people don't want to do. So they didn't close the borders to these people. So they claimed that the economy would suffer if these people didn't come. Not closing the border was ridiculous. And worse than anything is they're not testing anybody. So here's a case where a totalitarian system could use their infrastructures to fight a virus. And here, democracy, so-called, is giving false numbers, and they're not containing and they're not testing. And so they got caught, and now the numbers are rising exponentially, and they've closed all the borders, and now we're under isolation. All businesses closed. In this case, we can learn a lot from China, a lot, which is ironic, because here's a film that you're showing about health in China where they acted horrifically. But when they do something correct, you got to be honest and say they did it right. Okay, at the beginning, they fudged the numbers and they weren't transparent. They didn't come clean. But their aggressive containment and keeping people home, testing people, and their lockdown for 60 million people really worked. So here's a case when freedom of movement worked in the favor of saving people's lives. Whereas in Ximei's case, she's not allowed to have freedom of movement, and it's actually hurting people because they can't get medicine. So it's quite an irony. The world is just upside down today. It's heartbreaking to plan all this, and all the filmmakers came together, and all of a sudden we can't show it. So thank you very much, Movies That Matter, for showing online this film and keeping it in the air and keeping voices that matter visible. So thank you very much, Julie. Thank you very much, Movies That Matter. This is a festival that really has great impact. And thank you, audience. Thank you for the audience for watching and making Movies That Matter possible, because you need the audience as well as the festival organizers. So thank you. And thank you for Ximei.